After 12 long years, the wife who cheated on me and abandoned me while I was in the hospital is now seeking my forgiveness. Hello, my name is Jason. I'm 47 years old, and I want to share my story and seek advice. This happened 12 years ago when I was married to Susan, my first wife. We had been together for 7 years and were raising 2 children, Laura and Lucas, who were 5 and 3 years old at the time. We lived an ordinary life until one fateful day. One morning, on my way to work, my car collided with another vehicle that had veered into oncoming traffic at high speed. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed, covered in bandages and plaster. A nurse informed me that I had come out of a coma after 2 days. I shook my doctor's hand and thanked him for saving my life. I was grateful for this second chance, but had no idea what disaster lay ahead. A week into my treatment, the doctor told me that the lower half of my body was paralyzed and that I might never walk again. I was devastated. The news was hard to process, especially knowing that now Susan would have to take full responsibility for the house and the kids. I fell into a deep depression, unable to come to terms with spending the rest of my life in a wheelchair. I spent my days staring at the empty walls of my hospital room, consumed by the fear that I'd never again play football with my children, dance with my wife, or simply feel free. To make matters worse, Susan stopped visiting me regularly. At first, she brought the kids 3 times a week. Those moments with my family were the only thing keeping me going. But with each passing day, her visits became less frequent. I begged her to bring the kids more often, but she claimed they didn't want to see me so frequently. I felt powerless. Then, one day, she brought me divorce papers saying, "I can't spend my life with a disabled man. I'm still young and attractive, and I deserve a normal husband." I can't say I didn't see it coming. I had felt our relationship growing colder, but I didn't think it would happen so quickly. A month after the accident, friends told me they'd seen Susan at cafes and shopping malls, walking hand in hand with a middle-aged man, probably in his 50s. Some claimed she'd been having an affair even before the accident, while others believed she'd started the relationship out of despair after my misfortune. Barely 2 months after the accident, before I was even discharged from the hospital, she filed for divorce. Looking back, I may sound calm while recounting all of this, but at the time, I was far from it. I was furious, broken, and deeply depressed. I found myself trapped in a wheelchair, penniless and divorced, with no income or savings. After covering household expenses and the children's education, there was nothing left. Fortunately, insurance covered part of the medical bills, but the rest had to come out of my dwindling savings. In the end, I was left with nothing. I wanted to scream, bang my head against the wall, and curse my fate. I don't know how I managed to stay afloat back then, but something inside me kept me from losing my mind. Maybe it was the desire for revenge. After being discharged, I moved in with my parents. I was 35 years old, without a family or job, and completely dependent on my elderly mother, both physically and financially. My mother, a florist who ran a small suburban shop, supported me with her modest income and pension. Even with such limited resources, she offered to help me. For a 35-year-old man, it was the most humiliating thing imaginable to rely on a 62-year-old mother. Shortly after my discharge, I decided to visit my children. When I arrived at my former home, it was locked. Neighbors told me that Susan had moved in with her lover, taking the kids with her. According to them, Susan's lover was an overweight, thrice-divorced older man, incredibly wealthy but childless. Some called her a gold digger, others a cheap woman willing to sleep with a grumpy old man for his fortune. I found out her boyfriend's address and went to his house. When I got there, Susan refused to let me see the kids, saying they had already gotten used to her boyfriend and even started calling him Dad. She told me that my unexpected visit would only confuse them. I insisted on seeing them, but she threatened me with a restraining order. I had no money for a lawyer and was surviving on my mother's modest income, so I had no choice but to back down. Less than 6 months had passed since the accident, and only a few months since the divorce, yet Susan was already living with another man. I felt disgusted. I asked her how she could abandon me so quickly and move on as if nothing had happened. Yes, it might have seemed childish, but I was a helpless father, confined to a wheelchair. What else could I do? I begged her to give me just one chance to prove my worth. She humiliated me, saying I was a burden in her life. I asked her if she had been unfaithful to me before the divorce, considering it had been finalized just a month prior, and she was already living with her lover. She brushed me off, saying it was none of my business, and told me never to show up in her life again. I stood there silently, thinking about our 7 years of marriage. 7 years with a woman who had replaced me with another man in just a few months. I left her doorstep with tears streaming down my face. When I got home, I felt humiliated and defeated. I wept like a 5-year-old child in front of my mother, who comforted me. She encouraged me to take control of my life. I was completely lost and had no idea where to begin. For a start, I joined my mother in her flower shop. I helped her make bouquets, serve customers, and clean the shop. Soon, I realized the business had huge potential, but my mother was too frail to handle it on her own. I reconnected with former acquaintances and started negotiating contracts with companies and event organizers for flower supplies. Gradually, I built a team, began taking orders for venue decorations, and eventually founded my own event management company. Rebuilding my life took 12 long years, and throughout that time, my mother was my rock. She supported and inspired me to rise again. A year after the accident, I learned that Susan was planning to leave the city with the kids and her lover. I rushed to her house to see my children, but by the time I arrived, they were already gone. Prior to that, I had tried to contact my kids many times, but Susan insulted me and chased me away each time. She had full custody of the children and could make all the decisions for them, as I was physically and financially constrained. I couldn't challenge her custody, nor could I fight the restraining order she had threatened, because I didn't have the money to hire a lawyer. Meanwhile, Susan's wealthy boyfriend had the means to back her every move. I didn't know whether this man had been in her life before my accident or if he had entered it afterward. All I knew was that he was a wealthy individual with extensive inherited property. Over the past 12 years, every time I got information about my children, I would try to meet them, but my attempts were always unsuccessful. Susan threatened to have me arrested, claiming her boyfriend had the money and connections to get away with anything. Interestingly, despite living together for all these years, her boyfriend never married Susan. A year ago, I finally filed for joint custody. I waited until my event management business stabilized, submitted the application, and eventually secured 15 days of custody. Next week, my children are flying to see me, despite Susan's efforts to obstruct my petition in court. I hired a good lawyer who presented my case effectively, and I won my 15 days. Moreover, my children are now old enough to express their own opinions, and when asked if they wanted to meet me, they said yes. I know I can't make up for the 12 lost years, but I want to spend quality time with them. As the moment approaches, I feel both nervous and excited. They are now 17 and 15 years old, and I know teenagers these days can be demanding. I just hope they won't be overly angry or toxic toward me. I don't know what stories Susan might have told them over these 12 years, and I'm wondering whether I should tell them the truth about their mother. Do you have any advice on how I should act? I'm incredibly nervous and, at the same time, unbelievably happy. Hello, everyone. I have some important updates to share. I missed 2 key points in my first post. Firstly, About my current wife, Amy? Yes, I remarried 5 years ago to a wonderful woman named Amy, an interior designer. We met at an event where she was decorating a wedding venue, and I was supplying the flowers. At that time, I had not yet started my own business. It wasn't love at first sight, but we immediately connected. We kept meeting at similar events over the course of several months and became friends. Amy was a single mother with a 3-year-old daughter. She was the one who suggested starting an event management company, as she had significant experience in the field and the necessary connections. We became business partners, dated for a year, and then got married. Today, we are a happy family of 4: Amy, her daughter Mia, my mother, and me. Mia was thrilled to have a grandmother in her life, and my mother was just as delighted. The second point is about the accident compensation. I was hit by a truck, and the logistics company that owned it should have compensated me. However, at the time, the company manipulated the facts of the accident and shifted the blame onto me. I didn't have the resources to hire a good lawyer and didn't receive a cent. You know how big corporations work. They spend a fortune on legal teams to protect themselves. After we got married, Amy encouraged me to file another lawsuit, as we could now afford a competent attorney. The case is still in court, but our lawyer is optimistic about a favorable outcome. Now, back to my story. As I mentioned in my first post, 3 months ago, my kids were supposed to move in with me for the first time in 12 years since the divorce. I was both excited and nervous, but Amy calmed me down and supported me throughout. I went to the airport to pick them up. My eldest, Laura, is now 17, and my youngest, Lucas, is 15. They've grown into beautiful and charming teenagers. After our initial greeting, the conversation didn't flow naturally. The 3 of us felt awkward. On the way home, I tried to ease the tension by asking them about school and their city. I deliberately avoided mentioning their mother, and they didn't bring her up either. The kids were unusually quiet, or perhaps they were just waiting for the right moment to put on their headphones, as many teenagers do. When we arrived home, Amy greeted us. The kids looked shocked, which I understand. Amy must have been a surprise for them. But if their mother could live with another man just a few months after our divorce, why couldn't I remarry? Amy had prepared a guest room for them. We had lunch together, during which Amy shared our family vacation plans with them. Their reaction was neutral. They weren't excited, but they didn't oppose the idea either. Amy and I were puzzled by their mixed response. Later, the kids locked themselves in their room. Shortly afterward, Susan called me, accusing me of deceiving the kids. She claimed I had brought them over just so Amy and I could manipulate them. I was stunned by her behavior. She blamed me for hiding my remarriage from the kids. I was baffled by her accusations and hung up the call, but she kept calling relentlessly. Deciding to address the issue head-on, I sat down with my kids and asked them what was wrong. After a pause, they began to speak. They were angry with me because they had been told I had abandoned them. Susan had brainwashed them, filling their heads with lies and deceit. I told them the truth, that it was their mother who left me for another man at the first opportunity. Back then, they were children, but still remembered those events. I explained how Susan disappeared with them into the house of that older man, and how she threatened and drove me away every time I tried to contact them. I showed them court orders and my rejected requests to see them. They cried and regretted believing their mother's lies all these years. My younger son, Lucas, admitted that he once tried to contact me through social media but was caught by Susan. She emotionally manipulated him and made him promise never to try reaching out to me again. The kids also shared that Susan's boyfriend often scolded them during family gatherings. Susan and the kids were humiliated because she wasn't officially married to him. Susan remained his mistress, living in his house. Although he covered their education expenses, There was no father figure in their lives. My heart broke hearing what my children had endured. When the truth finally came to light, we hugged and cried together. We went on a week-long vacation to Florida and had a wonderful time. Laura and Lucas bonded with Amy and Mia, who turned 8 this year. I was on cloud 9, seeing my family together. My children posted our group photos on social media with the caption, "Happy Family." As soon as Susan saw those pictures, she called them and scolded them for what she called their foolish behavior. She accused them of betrayal for being close to us. Then she messaged me, threatening that she would no longer allow me to see the kids if I tried to turn them against her. I laughed off her empty threats and continued to enjoy our vacation. After we returned, my children met my relatives, who welcomed them warmly. It brought me so much joy to see old bonds being restored. Before leaving, Laura and Lucas promised to stay in touch despite their mother's threats. They confided that living in her house felt suffocating and vowed to move in with me as soon as they finished school. I hugged them and said goodbye. Upon their return, they confronted Susan and told her everything about her wrongdoings. However, she twisted the narrative, accusing me of manipulation. It's been a few months since they went back, but we've been regularly staying in touch. I remain hopeful that they will soon come to live with me. If anything changes, I'll be sure to share it. Hello, everyone. I know it's been a while since my last update, and a lot of drama has unfolded over the past 6 months. After my first meeting with my kids 3 months ago, the lawsuit against the logistics company finally concluded. And guess what? I received a substantial compensation, not just for the accident, but also for the injustice during the first trial. I shared this news with my kids, and they were just as thrilled as I was. They expressed their desire to live with me permanently, and I promised them that it would happen soon. About a month later, Susan came to my office. She took my hand and asked for forgiveness. I was stunned by her sudden appearance. She admitted that after my accident, she had felt desperate. She found an older man who was looking for a sugar baby. I didn't even know the term until I Googled it that same day. Essentially, she became his mistress. This sugar daddy had a history of bad experiences with younger women who ran off with his money after just a few months. So, he decided to settle for someone not so young, Susan, who was 32 at the time. The fact that Susan had 2 kids served as a kind of guarantee of her loyalty. The man made it clear he had no intention of marrying her, and would keep her as his mistress because he didn't want to share his inheritance with her children. Susan agreed to these terms because he promised to provide for her and pay for the kids' education. I asked her why she didn't just get a job. She said she had never worked and doubted she could earn enough to maintain the lifestyle her lover provided. She kept insisting that she did it for the children's future, claiming they would have grown up in poverty if she hadn't taken this step. Her reasoning infuriated me, and I yelled at her, saying she could have at least given me a chance to recover. If she cared so much about the kids' future, she should have discussed it with me instead of making rash decisions and abandoning me without warning. I made it clear that I had a new life now, and her pleas didn't concern me. She tried to remind me of the happy moments we shared, like our wedding day, the birth of our children, and other memories. I dismissed her, saying I was a different person now, and those memories meant nothing to me anymore. Then she crossed a line by saying that she and my kids were my real family, not Amy and Mia. She declared that Mia wasn't my biological daughter, and that I could never build a proper family with Amy and Mia. Her cruelty left me speechless. She demanded that I take her back so our real family could be reunited. I firmly told her that I loved Amy and Mia, and that they were my true family, not her. Susan refused to leave my office and caused a scene, only leaving after I threatened to call the police. When I got home, I told my mother and Amy about the incident. Naturally, Amy was upset, but as a mature person, she didn't create drama over it. My mother said she had never liked Susan because of her selfishness. She even added that Susan had probably returned to me only because of the money I received from the lawsuit. My mother called her a true gold digger. When my kids learned about their mother's behavior, they scolded her and told her to get a grip. I'm not sure how her sugar daddy found out about the incident, but he threatened to kick her out if she ever tried to contact me again. I was surprisingly grateful to him for that. The big news is that my kids are moving in with me this month. They'll live with us for a while before I help them settle into college nearby. They want to enjoy their student lives and stay in a dorm, which I fully support. I believe we should maintain a strong connection while also giving each other enough space to feel comfortable as we rebuild our relationship. The kids have turned away from Susan, leaving her with nothing but her sugar daddy. I hope this sweet life she's chosen lasts as long as it can, before it inevitably turns bitter. Thank you for your attention. Subscribe, leave comments, and share your thoughts about the behavior of the main character's sister and how you would have acted in this situation. Have a great day.